Hey students, today we're going to talk about circles and circumference. So a circle is always named by whatever its center is. So if we have a circle here and this is the center and we call it A, then this would be called circle A. And sometimes it's also denoted by a little circle like that. But first we need to cover some definitions. So the radius of a circle is from the center to an outside point, to an edge of the circle, I should say. So anywhere, maybe I should color code these, from the center out to the edge is called the radius. Now, the diameter goes all the way across. It's also considered a chord, but it passes through the center of the circle, and it goes from one edge to another. So anything goes from one edge to the other edge, that's considered the diameter. So from that, you can see that anywhere from the center to the edge is the radius. So the diameter is 2 of the radius, or the radius is 1/2 of the diameter, however you want to look at that. Let's label some of these. Let's say that's A to B. Oops, already used A. Let's try B to C. Instead. Okay, so that's the diameter. A chord now can be any segment that has endpoints on the circle, but it doesn't necessarily have to pass through the center. So a chord is a segment with endpoints on the circle. And so we could have several of these. We could say, well, from right here to right here. That would be point D to E. That would be considered a chord because it touches both edges of the circle, but it does not have to go through the center, unlike the diameter. And mostly on this section, we're going to need to know the difference between the diameter and the radius. That's what's really important here. Okay, so then if we have an angle inside here, that's just going to be anything that goes from one edge to another edge that touches the center. Okay, its vertex is in the center, and it just touches the endpoints. So we could label that F to G, and that would be angle F goes to A, the center, and then to G. And then any arc on here would be one of the outside edges. So let's say if we wanted to say this was an arc, that would be arc FG, and it's denoted by an arc above it. So it's like a continuous point on the circle or a continuous segment on the outside of the circle. Okay, so those are some of the definitions that we need to know. There are two things that we want to talk about when we're talking about circles. The first is its circumference. And so when we talk about the circumference of the circle, it's the distance around the circle. So if I have a circle here and I want to see the distance around that circle, that's this outside edge. What's this length out here? So like we would say that's, well, why isn't that just perimeter? Because that's perimeter in all of our other shapes, but for circles we call it circumference. Okay? And to know, there's a formula to calculate the circumference, and that is always denoted with a capital C, 2 pi r. So that's 2 times the radius times pi, or it can be the diameter times pi. Well, that makes sense because diameter is 2 times the radius. So they're sort of the same formula. It's just whatever information that is given to you. All right, so you may have to label some or name some radius and chords and things on a circle, but I really wanted to do a couple of examples of trying to find the circumference of a circle. So if we're going to look for the circumference of a circle, let's say it has, let's say we're given a circle and we have a radius of 3. That's what we're given. Well, then I'm going to look at the formula and say, oh, I'm going to use my 2 pi r formula for that. All right, well, let's fill in the information we know. Here we know radius is 3. Well, what is this thing called pi? Well, you may know it's approximately 3.14. And once we get to using, we go to higher math and we use our calculators, we'll actually use that entire thing. So for right now, we're just going to say it's 3.14. So we're going to fill in the information that we know. 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 3. And you can remember multiplication doesn't, or order doesn't matter when you're multiplying those. So we can multiply in any order that you want to there. So you might want to look at that and say, well, 2 times 3 is 6, and then 6 times 3.14. You can go in order. Either one is fine. And when I multiplied all that together, I got 18.84. Is that one. Now, let's say, what if we have a circle and we're given the diameter? Remember, diameter is all the way across. Well, let's say, well, what happens if our diameter is 12? Well, then we might want to use the other formula, diameter times pi. And so we'll say we know diameter is 12 and pi is 3.14. So when I multiply those together, I should get 37.68. And that is all you have to do to find circumference. So just remember, I think the hardest part there is to do not get your radius and your diameter mixed up. Just remember which one they're giving you when you're doing your homework or looking at those, and that should be fairly easy.